You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me?
Yeah, I'm talking to you. Let's talk about Robert De Niro's preparation to become Travis Brickle, the lonely and resentful cabbie from the classic film Taxi Driver. In this video, we'll unravel how the Hollywood star prepared for this iconic role. Did you know De Niro drove a cab at night in New York City? He also improvised the screenwriter's favorite scene and wanted to make a sequel. So stay tuned to learn about that and more. It's a pretty straightforward title. Taxi Driver is about a man who drives a taxi and hates how dirty New York City has become. He's a lonely man who can't connect to other people and finds a questionable way to steam off his rage. With Brickle's profession being so fundamental to how the character perceives the world, De Niro decided to explore the experience himself. The actor got licensed by the Taxi and Limousine Commission in 1975 and actually picked up and dropped off passengers around New York.
It was an interesting experience. I must have done it a week or 10 days, give or take. Yeah, it was interesting.
He told me that one of the first feeling he had after a couple of nights was that, and he did it at night, was that a person will get in a car, stranger, and then control your life, in effect, for the next 20 minutes or 45 minutes.
De Niro had just won an Oscar for his role in The Godfather Part 2 and drove his cab for long hours, always at night. The actor believes he did a good job.
You actually got a taxi cab driver's license. When you did Taxi Driver, you actually were a cabbie for a little bit.
Can you imagine getting into a cab and finding out your driver is Robert De Niro? Well, that happened to at least one lucky young actor.
But there was one guy who got in for a second, and I looked at him through the rear view mirror, and he looked at me, checked me out. For a second, there was a moment of maybe, is this him? But then that was it. I drove him, and he didn't go any.
De Niro was so focused on understanding the universe that he spent many hours in taxi garages hanging out with other cabbies. But understanding Travis was more than getting into the mannerisms of his profession. So, De Niro decided to dive deep into the mind of the person who created Travis, Paul Schrader, the screenwriter. What did De Niro find out in his research? Every great movie starts with a great story, and Schrader's script was so incredible, it captured De Niro right away.
It was a script we all couldn't wait to do. And it's interesting, even in that, you could identify with the Travis character, the alienation. And I'm from New York, born and raised in the village. I could identify with the alienation. So it just, something about that story, that script that Paul wrote, Paul Schrader, we wanted to do.
He loved the script and related to the protagonist. All he needed to do was master the role, and he cut no corners to achieve that. De Niro studied different types of mental illness to understand Travis's disturbance better, and even interviewed American soldiers in Italy while shooting Bertolucci's 1900. He also studied mental illness, and during his off time when filming 1900, visited a US Army base in northern Italy, and tape-recorded conversations with Midwestern soldiers so he could pick up their accent. But probably the rawest information De Niro got was from Schrader himself. The writer, who struggled with mental illness in the past, got inspiration from his real life to develop Taxi Driver. He also taped himself reading from the diaries of Arthur Bremer, the man convicted of attempted murder against presidential candidate George Wallace. In his book, Rausch reveals that De Niro, he listened repeatedly to tapes of Schrader reading from Arthur Bremer's diaries. De Niro lost 30 pounds for the role and met with Schrader frequently to pick his brain about the dark period during which he had written the screenplay. Realizing that De Niro wanted to incorporate elements of him into the character of Travis Brickle, Schrader gave him a pair of jeans and his boots, which De Niro wore in the film. All the research got De Niro so much into Brickle's head that he even corrected Martin Scorsese when the director suggested that if Travis Brickle was an animal, he'd be a tiger. For the actor, Travis would definitely be a wolf. De Niro and Brickle became two minds connected. Is that the place where improvisation is born? "You talking to me" is perhaps the most famous quote in De Niro's entire career. But these 4 words were not written in the actual Taxi Driver script. Robert De Niro ad-libbed them.
There was no dialogue, I believe, in the scene. And I remember asking you, I said, could you say something to yourself in the mirror? It was the last week of shooting. We were over schedule, 5 days. It was very difficult. And we said, okay, we're just going to shoot this scene. And locked the door so our assistant director wouldn't get in and whatever. And he started improvising it, and he kept saying, "Are you talking to me?"
Talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here.
It was like a jazz riff. It was just like a solo.
What'd you say?
What do you think?
De Niro didn't plan to improvise, and the words arose in his mind in the spur of the moment.
How does improvisation fit in with that? Is it something that you build this character up first and then you start improvising, or does the improvisation sort of help in the creation of the character?
Well, all those ways. I mean, you don't sometimes even plan certain things. You've been thinking about it, the scene, what to do. Maybe you'd say this or that before, whatever. Sometimes things come out that you never even planned or thought of. A Taxi Driver, we just, as I remember, then I had the thing with the gun too, which was another thing to have to do, and sometimes I'd be having trouble with it, which actually worked into the scene, so it was okay. Yeah. But that was another thing. I just started doing, riffing on the mirror, and that was what it was.
Regardless of where it came from, the line is unforgettable. In the interview with Film Comment, Paul Schrader admitted, "To me, it's the best thing in the movie, and I didn't write it." Unforgettable, yes, but De Niro did not calculate how much people would bring it up.
Did you know it would follow you around for 40 years after the movie came out?
No, you never know with any of that stuff. I mean, we just did it.
The line, the character, the movie. There's so much to remember about Taxi Driver, but does De Niro ever think about it at all? The answer is yes. The actor has admitted he'd love to see Travis in a sequel.
We talked at one time, people would ask me about, what about Travis Bickle? And I'd say, yeah, that's an interesting idea. And Marty and I talked about it, and then we talked about it with Schrader and Paul Schrader, and there was some work that he had done on it, but it never seemed to get to a place that would really make it worth doing another movie.
But a sequel never came about. So every time we want to revisit the intriguing and captivating Travis Brickle, all we need to do is rewatch the 1976 cinematic Pearl. Would you like to see a Taxi Driver sequel? Comment your answer down below.